Chinese New Year!
Chinese New Year, everyone.
恭喜发财!
Welcome to PointBlank, where we discuss issues close to you. And I'm Elsie.
And I'm Shi Ting. Tonight it's all about the budget, what it means to you, and we have our two guests here to help us make sense of it all. And first we have Mr. Chiu Wu Hong, Executive Director of KPMG Tax Services and Associate. And also Professor Kampon from NTU. Welcome to our studio.
To our studio.
Yes. Okay, well, before we go on, let's take a look at what are some of the goodies that the government has in store for us. Ka-ching! To add on to the Lunar New Year celebrations, the government gave an ang pao worth $20.5 billion to Singapore during the 2009 budget. Appropriately named the Resilience Package, it aims to help the economy stay strong during this period of economic downturn. There are 5 components to the package. First, $5.1 billion to help preserve jobs. Second, $5.8 billion to stimulate bank lending. Third, $2.6 billion to enhance business cash flow and competitiveness. Fourth, $4.4 billion to invest in the future by developing infrastructure and expanding provisions for education and healthcare. And lastly, $2.6 billion to support households, especially the lower-income families who will be hit the hardest during the recession. The sole breadwinner, Mr. Goh, is earning $1,500 a month. But that amount is barely sufficient for his wife and 2 children.
最辛苦就是说我刚刚公司那时候他倒闭的时候了，连他们也是有欠薪水啦，连变成我那时候好像真的迷不懂要做什么就对了，连因为然后我们收入就没有了，连回到家庭又有事情，这是难免的嘛，对不对？
那现在会担心同样的事情发生？
现在就是说，因为当然会啦，但是说没办法，我们也要走一步算一步啦。现在有的做就尽量做啦，不过我还是会再看看有没有更好的工作做。比较高的收入。对对对。
Under the resilience package, Mr. Goh and his family will receive additional GST credits up to $500, additional month of service and conservancy charges rebates up to a total of 4 months, public transport vouchers, financial assistance for his 2 children. Their education is his topmost priority.
我们也不他再像我这样，对不对？希望他会读多点书。我有要求 CDC 有协助，有一些真的是我们不会啊，也是不懂去怎样申请。
Through the help of Northwest CDC, Mr. Goh has a better idea of the assistance he can apply for, and he's also receiving $150 per month under his work support program. Under the budget, self-help groups like CDC's will also receive an increase in funding to $9 million a year. Expressing the desire to preserve jobs of Singaporeans like Mr. Goh, the government introduced the Jobs Credit Scheme. Employers will receive a 12% cash grant on the first $2,500 of each month's wages for each employee. More subsidies will be given to training, and the government will also step up recruitment. Further efforts to help companies stay afloat, the government launched the Special Risk Sharing Initiative (SRI) to ensure that they continue to have access to credit. For the first time, it will also get involved in trade financing and unsecured loans, taking on as much as 80% of the risk. The government also cut corporate income tax from 18% to 17% to sharpen Singapore's competitiveness to overseas investments. There is also a 40% property tax rebate for industrial and commercial properties.
We will do everything we need to ensure that Singapore emerges stronger and more competitive, and we open up space against the rest of the field.
Yes, indeed. They are doing everything they can do to help the economy. And for the first time, we are actually dipping into the National Reserves.
Yep.
So, Kampon, what do you think are the short-term and long-term impacts of that?
So basically, when you have a deficit, right, as a result of dipping in the reserve, Singapore is a exceptional case because you have a lot of saving in your country. And if you compare to the US or other countries. They have to borrow from the next generation to spend. But Singapore, you have the money putting out there. When you have a recession, you want to fix the problem, you can use that money. Okay, it may have a crowding out effect. People concerned about crowding out effect, but because this is saving, so that's not the case.
Okay, for the layman, do you want to explain what's crowding out effect?
So basically, when the government spend money on, right, government is kind of also an agent. So the source of money, if they don't have it on hands, they have to borrow. And that money, actually, the private sector might also want that money. Okay, so if it's the money in the market, we call this crowd out effect because government kind of, so this money is supposed to go to the private sector, government have it.
Okay.
So in case of Singapore, because you have a lot of saving and reserve, so I don't think you have to worry about that.
Okay. So you think that that's not an issue for that to dip into the national reserve because of the savings that Singapore already has?
I mean, this is the first time, and this is the kind of very severe recession. It's a very big financial crisis. So you have to be very careful about the reserve. It's not like once we open this, we can just keep using it.
Yeah.
But you have to be very careful.
So it's just a temporary thing. So what about Mr. Chu?
I tend to agree with what you said in the sense that dipping into the reserve is really a very important decision that the government has made. And in fact, we have the sufficient savings and not to dip into the reserve, but we chose to do that because I think the government wants to have the flexibility to use some of these savings to fund some other emergency projects as the times go by. So I think this should be taken into context. And by not borrowing from banks, it has its advantage because a lot of times when you borrow heavily from external sources, when the economy recovers, you have to recover back some money in the form of higher taxes to repay back your loans. So this is an extra burden for the future generations. You have to borrow from the banks or elsewhere.
I see.
But actually, the reserves was dipped into to fund two initiatives, and one is like the jobs credit scheme, and one is to keep the lending flowing for business. So there are some Singaporeans who say that this is such a pro-business budget and not enough help given to families. So maybe what do you think?
Well, I thought the job credit scheme is a very innovative approach and it's very effective. I think by giving cash grants to employers, it is sort of like and give a government the government give the people the message that look, I want to protect jobs for you. Like what Mr. Goh, we have seen from Mr. Goh. Mr. Goh said he's very worried that he will lose his jobs. If he loses his job, he cannot have the operating the expenses to run his family and finance his family and things like that. So this job credit scheme is ready to protect jobs, and by giving the cash grants to the family members, to the companies, sorry.
Okay. Some people feel that we should increase demand for goods rather than save jobs as the main objective now. Is that a reasonable, criticism?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to have a recovery economy, right, you have to increase your aggregate demand. But somehow, if you try to keep the job for the workers, somehow if they have a job, they have income, they spend. So it's also increased aggregate demand. And I think the government makes sure that people in needy families have enough money to spend to survive in this recession. And because of a lot of money go to low-income people, right? These people actually, they spend a lot of money. In economics, we call marginal propensity to consume. When they have $100 from the government, they spend $90 or $95. If you give the same amount of money to middle-income people, they might just spend, $30 or $7. So I think it makes sense that the government try to help needy families, and also at the end of the day, it will increase aggregate demand somehow.
Okay.
The other advantage of this scheme is also that instead of the government, what the government could do is to reduce the CPF contribution rate. But I think it chooses not to do that because if you reduce the CPF contribution, what it means is that the wealth of the individual will be eroded. Yeah, and also sometimes families need a CPF contribution to
finance
the housing loans.
Housing loan, yeah.
So and we try not to do that. So therefore, this job credit scheme is being implemented. I thought it's very good, and all my clients and SME companies they say that this is a very good measures. Yeah.
Do they think that it's going to be really effective in preventing them cutting jobs? And you mentioned about the SMEs owners.
Yeah, I think this will go a long way to prevent companies from retrenching their employees. The government has done so much, and now it's really the moral obligation for companies to do likewise. So they'll think long and hard before axing people and cut wages. Yeah.
Yeah, actually this morning I was reading the newspapers and there's a huge front page headline that says US just cut I don't know how many thousand jobs, the number's so big.
Yeah.
And actually, like you said just now, our economy is so open.
Yes.
We're so affected by the US economy. So is the jobs credit scheme going to help companies from cutting jobs when we are
under this global sentiment is so poor now, actually. So would that even be just a drop in the bucket, the jobs credit scheme?
The job credit scheme is just one of the many measures that the government is advocating or implementing. Of course, there's other schemes like the Special Risk Initiative, whereby government is trying to allow companies to have more credit facility and more avenue to borrow money from the banks, and hopefully banks will be more willing to extend the credit. So coupled with this risk sharing scheme plus the job credit scheme, I think a lot of help will be given, and this will certainly help companies to protect them.
But you also did mention that it's a temporary scheme, right? This jobs credit, because the reason is that it's across the board. Maybe why is that?
Yeah, and this job credit scheme is a broad-based initiative, regardless of which industry the company is in, or whether the company is making money or not. So it's meant to be a temporary scheme because this scheme cannot be permanent in the sense that we do not want to encourage businesses that do not have a good sound business model to continue to survive, and the government would not want to continue to subsidize these type of companies.
Correct.
Yeah, and actually I want to come back to the point where Shi Ting brought up about this stimulating the demand, because I recall that Taiwan did the same thing by giving out vouchers to their citizens and just go out and spend. So why don't Singapore try to do that actually to stimulate demand?
Well, at first I think, if you get money, directly from the government, everyone will be so happy.
Yeah, that's really a Chinese New Year goodie.
Ang pao.
Yeah.
I think somehow the Singapore government tried to put the incentive issue on this kind of programs, that you have to work to get something special. It's not just like free money from heaven and then you just spend it on. You have to put some effort to get the ang pao, right?
That's right. The other thing is that I'd like to add on what you just said, is that Singapore economy is very open.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's such a small country. So every dollar I pump in, right, the next moment you could be shopping in JB, with the voucher or with the extra cash. So we try to contain the revenue leakage or the funds being used elsewhere. Yeah.
So you're saying that the cash that comes to the people may not flow back to the domestic market to the domestic companies, right? Because we travel so much and be in Bangkok and
I know somebody's going there soon.
tomorrow.
Okay, then how about, some people are actually hoping that we have a GST card, from the 7% down, and that will. Is that a good measure?
There might be another way to stimulate consumption and demand then.
Yeah, but I think the government tried to make it as a temporary program because they want to touch the fundamental problem, right? Because, let's say now we have recession, people talk about lower GST, but once, if we're lucky enough, we might have a recovery by next year. So if you raise the tax, if you lower the tax, it's okay. But once you raise the tax up, it's an issue, right? So somehow they think that, okay, the fundamental is still there, don't touch it, leave it there, it's okay, it's not broken. But if we have recession, we want to do something helping people, do the temporary thing, do the thing that don't change the whole system.
So keep the GST system intact, you're saying?
Right, because if you change GST, you have to, change the whole system. grocery shopping, or you go to the
Yeah.
gas station, they have to change the whole accounting system.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah,
also the very troublesome thing to do.
I see.
So
I see.
actually, we were hoping that the GST rate will drop, but we know that it's a bit of wishful thinking because as what you just said. But also, we also hope to see that maybe instead of the GST rate drop, but we can see that certain exemptions is being given to maybe certain necessities, foods, and which is